Welcome to the August 3rd, 2023 State Board of Education meeting. I'm Eric Davis, Chair of the Board, and I call this meeting to order. Welcome to all board members and advisors, staff, on-site visitors, online listeners, and Twitter followers. You can follow the State Board of Education on Twitter at EDStateBoard_NC. Remind the audience and those listening that this body meets monthly with its official meeting scheduled for the first Thursday of the month. Discussion of agenda items typically held on Wednesday prior to the official meeting day, as we did yesterday. And a reminder, on-site visitors and online listeners, that you can follow our meeting online and see our materials by going to SBE meetings at www.ncpublicschools.org. Board members, you're reminded that it's our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts of interest as we handle the work of this board. Does any member of the board know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before us at this meeting? So please state them for the record. If during the meeting you become aware of an actual or apparent conflict of interest, please bring the matter to the attention of the chair. It will then be your duty to abstain from participating in discussion on the matter and from voting on the matter. This time I call on my colleague, Mr. Wendell Hall, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May we all stand? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Mr. Hall. We now come to our special recognitions for the month, the time on our agenda when we recognize significant awards and honors, as well as recognize those who make a difference in the lives of our public school students and their communities. We're honored to include today the 2023 United States Senate Youth Scholarship recipient recognitions, the State Board of Education advisors and teacher and principal of the year cohorts, and recognition of our summer interns. I'll begin with our superintendent to recognize our student of the year.
Our student advisor?
Advisor,
yes.
Excuse me, student advisor.
Yes, well, I would say that you are the student of the year, Isaiah. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you all our new junior advisor. As you all know, we have a incoming junior and an incoming senior. Lily will continue to serve as our senior advisor. And I wanted to introduce Isaiah to you all. He, if the board remembers, back in the winter, Karen Farrelly, Director of Center for Safer Schools, and I were invited to attend a play at Hillside High School in Durham, which has an incredible theater arts program. And the play was about school violence, neighborhood and community violence, as well as racial issues and other issues that youth are dealing with right now in our nation. And we ended up asking those students to come here to the department to have a roundtable with Karen and me. And we had an amazing conversation about not just the play, but about high school in general and what it's like to be a teenager and what they like about school, what they don't like about school. And I was particularly impressed with Isaiah's contribution to that conversation. And so have asked him to serve in this role, and he has said yes, and we're just so grateful. And so I welcome you, Isaiah, and we're so excited that you're here. Again, Hillside High School in Durham.
Come on, team.
We're going to do a picture. Stand between your chair and there
The easiest part.
you just have to smile.
Get all these folks back out.
And let's have everybody walk, step just 2 steps this way. Yep. Good. Stop. 2, 3, one more, and 1, 2, and 3. Thank you.
Welcome, Jessica.
Oh, Josiah's grandmother is here as well, and I believe she is a teacher. Yay, teachers!
And continuing our theme of recognizing students, I'll call on Dr. Lori Carlin for the United States Senate Youth Scholarship recipient recognitions. Dr. Carlin.
Good morning, Chair Davis, Vice Chair Duncan, Superintendent Truitt, members and advisors of the board. What a glorious day to be here celebrating our students and our educators. It's my pleasure once again to be here to present the 2023 North Carolina United States Senate Youth Scholarship recipients. The United States Senate Youth Program is one of my favorite things that we get to do here at the agency. My colleague, Michelle McLaughlin, runs a tremendously thoughtful, transparent, and extensive process that includes applications, recommendations, student presentations, interviews, and the national test. From this process emerged two outstanding young people who represent North Carolina as delegates to the United States Senate Youth Program. In addition to their week-long experience at the Capitol, these students receive a $10,000 scholarship to further their education. On behalf of Ms. Laughlin and the Office of Academic Standards, I'm delighted to introduce you to Jude Reese. Jude Reese is a 2023 graduate of Smithfield Selma High School, where as a senior, he served as the National Honor Society president. In 2022, Jude attended the North Carolina Governor's School East for Social Science. During his high school career, Jude served as the vice president of his DECA chapter, where he earned, among other awards, a first-place state finish in the Principles of Business Management event. Jude is also an Eagle Scout with a deep commitment to fostering growth in his community. Leading a gardening organization at his school, he worked to involve other students in outdoor projects that improved the school's image and heightened student engagement. This March, Jude represented North Carolina at the United States Senate Youth Program's Washington Week Education Experience for 104 of the nation's top youth leaders. Jude had the opportunity to meet, engage, and make lifelong friendships with the United States Senate Youth delegates from across the nation, and is now a member of an elite group of leaders. Along with leaders such as Senator Susan Collins of Maine, U.S. Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg, Colorado Senator Cory Gardner, and former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, Jude is now an official U.S. Senate Youth alumni. In the fall, Jude will begin his post-secondary studies as a freshman at Duke University. Jude plans to study public policy with hopes of having a career in public policy or law. Chairman Davis and members of the North Carolina State Board of Education, State Superintendent Catherine Truitt, and the K-12 Social Studies section at DPI present Mr. Jude McCullers Reese, North Carolina winner of the 2023 United States Senate Youth Scholarship. Kara served as treasurer for the Beta Club and was a member of both the National Honor Society and the National Technical Honor Society. Through participation in service-based clubs, Kara spent her high school years committed not only to academic excellence and achievement, but also to service. Kara actively volunteers with Samaritan's Purse and regularly volunteers to organize supply drives to collect hygiene items for underprivileged youth in the community. She works with nonprofit organizations that provide basic necessities to disadvantaged families and organizes seasonal projects to deliver holiday toys and treats to children in foster care. Kara has also dedicated countless hours to tutoring young students at the local elementary school in her community. Kara is interested in a career in public service and feels that the United States Senate Youth Program's education and leadership experiences that she had the privilege to engage in this past March will provide her valuable insight into career choices that will allow her to serve the public through public policy and government. She also affirms that representing North Carolina as a U.S. Senate Youth Delegate during the March Washington Week experience has enhanced her knowledge and understanding of the American system of government. We honor Ms. Kara Dugan as a North Carolina winner of the 2023 United States Senate Youth Scholarship.
I can have the second row step up just a little, just a little.
Second row.
Now flip in here, you're nice.
And 1, 2, 3, 1 more, 1, 2, 3. Congratulations to you.
And I believe your mom is here. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Mom.
Very good.
So, after celebrating some of our outstanding students, we'll now turn to some of our champions in public education, particularly in the profession of public education. I'll turn to Dr. Maria Petrie Martin, our Director of Board Operations and Policy.
Good morning to our chair, our vice chair, our superintendent, lieutenant governor, all those assembled. It is an honor today to introduce you to the new local superintendent advisor to the State Board of Education, Superintendent Dr. Don Phipps. He is the 2023 A. Craig Phillips North Carolina Superintendent of the Year, which is a very prestigious award presented annually. Dr. Phipps joined the Caldwell County Schools as superintendent in July of 2018, and in his 30-plus year career in education, he has served as a school psychologist, a nonprofit director of research and development, university professor, assistant principal, executive director, and superintendent. When the pandemic hit in 2020, Dr. Phipps directed the Caldwell County Schools to deploy school buses equipped with Wi-Fi to help students and their families with limited internet access. Also, Dr. Phipps has earned numerous degrees. He has a bachelor's degree from Methodist College. He also has a master's degree and a certificate of advanced study from App State. He has an education doctorate from App State University and a master's of education from UNC Charlotte in instructional systems technology. Please join me in welcoming the new local superintendent advisor to the state board, Dr. Don Phipps.
That's right. Congratulations.
This will be a Hickory Daily Rex. Some good news for a change.
That's
Celebration.
He's from the Northwest region.
That's right. Mr. Blackburn's region.
There you go.
I didn't do it this time. I won't do that again.
And 1, 2, and 3, 1 more, 1, 2, and 3.
Thank you.
Welcome, Dawn.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got my spot now. Make sure you do this sin.
Teacher.
to Sonia Brown for Principal and Teacher of the Year recognitions. Ms. Brown.
Good morning, and thank you, Chairman Davis, Superintendent Truitt, and members of the State Board. So just a little bit about both programs. The Teacher of the Year and the Principal of the Year programs are high-profile events for the agency, and since 1970 and 1984 respectively, the department, along with corporate sponsors, have facilitated these programs recognizing outstanding educators. So first up, the Teacher of the Year program. The Teacher of the Year program, commonly known as the Borough's Welcome Fund, North Carolina Teacher of the Year program, and they promote this program through advocacy and support, and they serve as the major sponsor for this particular program, along with other sponsorships from the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, North Carolina State Athletics, Globe Automotive, No Kid Hungry, Bojangles, Lenovo, Go Global, and Equitable Advisors. And now I present to you from Chapel Hill High School, the 2023 Borough's Welcome Fund North Carolina Teacher of the Year, Ms. Kimberly Jones.
Good morning, Chair Davis, Vice Chair Duncan, Lieutenant Governor Robinson, Superintendent Truitt, members of the board, and my fellow advisors and guests. It is my great privilege to introduce to you the 2023 Borough's Welcome Fund Regional Teacher of the Year team. I've had the privilege and the honor to see the passion, excellence, and expertise of each of these outstanding educators, and I am excited for the leadership they will provide not only in their regions, but across our state. I'm honored to have the opportunity to work alongside them as we advocate for the 1.5 million students and over 93,000 teachers in North Carolina. As a group of dedicated educators with over 155 years of collective teaching experience, we know that student success and teacher success are inextricably linked. We also know that the most pressing issues facing North Carolina's students, teachers, and school communities are likewise connected, and so too must be our work towards sustainable solutions. Our challenges face us from the mountains to the coast. Our solutions should likewise utilize the expertise that resides in every region of our state. As a team, we plan to work together to amplify, inspire, and empower the diverse voices of students, teachers, parents, and community stakeholders all across North Carolina. It must be acknowledged that the groundwork for such transformational, collaborative teacher leadership was laid by the 2021 Borough's Welcome Fund North Carolina Regional Teacher of the Year team led by Eugenia Floyd, and was further advanced by the inspirational and aspirational example of the 2022 Regional Teacher of the Year team led by Leah Parker. Thank you to both of these exceptional groups of educators for modeling the collaborative pursuit of success for all students, all teachers, and all school communities. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to introduce to you the 2023 Borough's Welcome Fund Regional Teacher of the Year team. From the Northwest region, high school science teacher, Casey Schulte. From the Southeast region, 4th grade teacher, Laura Wilson. From the Piedmont Triad region, middle school science teacher, Tiffany Wynn. From the Sand Hills region, K-5 AIG teacher, Tina Robinson. From the Southwest region, high school English teacher, Rachel Fry. From the Northwest region, high school Spanish teacher, Shay Bollock. From the Western region, high school Spanish teacher, Rachel Ray. Our charter schools teacher of the year, TV, film, and journalism teacher, Ryan Henderson. Our virtual teacher of the year through North Carolina VPS, math teacher, Rob Leitner. And in her absence, beginning teacher of the year, middle school multilingual language teacher, Natalia Mejia. And I'm Kimberly Jones, a high school English teacher who represents the North Central region. Together, we are the 2023 Burroughs Wellcome Fund Regional Teacher of the Year team, and we are honored to have the privilege and the incredible opportunity to serve our students, our colleagues, and our great state. Thank you.
Let's go!
I have to add, I wish every North Carolinian had the view that we have right now of that lineup of teachers. It would make you proud.
You guys are all nice. I'm so excited. Mine's not through myself.com, I promise you, not like Michael. Oh, wait. You want us to come up?
Yep, everybody needs to come up a little bit, and everybody needs to go down this way about 3 steps. Okay. Y'all can go over there.
Well, that's the way to do it.
Elaine, I can tell you want to say something.
Yeah.
Just to stand out, just. There we go. All right, y'all. And 1, 2, 3, and one more, and 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you for doing that. Thank you. I'm gonna take some of that. Thank you.
Next, the Wells Fargo Principal of the Year. The Wells Fargo Principal of the Year Award was introduced in 1984 to recognize the role of the principal in establishing an environment conducive to the pursuit and achievement of academic excellence in North Carolina's schools. This foundation sponsors the award in conjunction with the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. The Wells Fargo Principal of the Year serves as the North Carolina Ambassador for the state's school principals. And Wells Fargo also serves as the major sponsor along with No Kid Hungry, Jostens, Education First, and Equitable Advisors. And now I present to you from Cedar Ridge Elementary School in Surry County, the 2023 Wells Fargo North Carolina Principal of the Year, Ms. Donna Bledsoe.
Good morning, Chair Davis, Vice Chair Duncan, Superintendent Truitt, Lieutenant Governor Robinson, members of the board, fellow advisors, and guests. It gives me great honor and privilege to stand before you today, leading and serving alongside the 2023 Wells Fargo North Carolina Principal of the Year team. Our team is comprised of highly effective servant leaders who come from regions and districts across our great state, bringing their expertise to help advocate for public education, giving a voice to charter schools, rural and urban areas, various school enrollment numbers, and complexity. Those funded in the upper percentages of North Carolina school districts, and those of us funded in the lower portions of North Carolina's 115 school districts. We are committed to serving the approximate approximately 2,700 principals in North Carolina by advocating for the principalship, showcasing the joy that our profession brings to school culture and positive student outcomes. We will work throughout the state collectively to ensure the answers to questions are simply what is best for all North Carolina students. It is our commitment to leverage the principalship to spotlight the great work of North Carolina public educators and the opportunities afforded to public education families. Now, before I introduce you to the team, let me publicly thank Patrick Green, the 2022 Wells Fargo Principal of the Year, for his gracious partnership and guidance, as well as Elena Ashburn and the entire former Principal of the Year team. I could not ask for a better cohort who continue to champion for North Carolina schools and light the way. So now, allow me the privilege of introducing you to our 2023 Wells Fargo Principal of the Year cohort. From the Northwest Region, Dr. John Lassiter of Hartford Grammar and Duenas County Schools. From the Southeast Region, Miss Ashley Falconberry from Trent Park Elementary and Craven County Schools. Don't leave me standing here alone. From the North Central Region, Dr. William Logan, who is actually traveling out of the country right now. He is from Hillside High and is well represented by Josiah from Durham Public. From the Sand Hills region, Mr. Jim Butler from Richmond Senior High in Richmond County. I don't believe Mr. Butler can be with us today. From the Southwest region, Miss Tanya Williams, who served in Concord Middle in Cabarrus County, but now will be transitioning to an Executive Director of Learning Community in Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools. From the Northwest, Miss Jessie Gravel from Drexel Elementary in Burke County. I don't believe she is with us today. From the Western region, Miss Rafika Cobb from Ira V. Jones Elementary in Asheville City. And representing charter schools, Mr. TJ Worrell from the Northeast Academy of Aerospace and Advanced Technologies in Elizabeth City. And then there's me, Donna Bledsoe. I am representing the Piedmont Triad. Proud principal of Cedar Ridge Elementary in Surrey County Schools. Thank you, and we look forward to serving together to do what's best for our students and staff across the state. Thank you.
Let's go.
Great job.
That's right. That's right. She's fixed it.
That looks great.
Awesome.
And 1, 2, and 3. One more, and 1, 2, and 3.
What a team.
This is gonna be amazing.
Congratulations.
You worked it out.
And if you're a family member or supporter or cheerleader of any of our teachers or principals we just recognized, would you stand so we can thank you? then finally, we'll turn to Mr. Dylan Morris for recognition of our interns. Mr. Morris.
Good morning, Chair Davis, Vice Chair Duncan, Superintendent Truitt, and members of the board. It is my honor to present to you this morning a group of young adults who have spent their summer breaks from college working with the department and contributing to the great work that is being done here at DPI every single day. They have planned conferences and events. They have conducted data analysis and research, written reports, given presentations, developed standard operating procedures, and so much more contributing to the work of this agency. This is the future of education and of state government in North Carolina, and we are so glad to have had them and their contributions of knowledge and time and talent this summer. A few of our interns are currently engaged in work away from Raleigh today and could not attend, but I nonetheless want to recognize the entire cohort, and I would invite those who are with us today to please stand and come forward as their names are called. Our 2023 DPI intern cohort includes Lily Hahn, who is a graduate student from Harvard University, working with the Office of Accountability and Testing. Nia Dockery, an undergraduate student from UNC Chapel Hill, working with the Center for Safer Schools. Christopher Everett, an undergraduate student from UNC Chapel Hill, working with the Division of the Chief of Staff. Alicia Garcia, a graduate student from the University of Pennsylvania, working with the Center for Safer Schools. Madison Goodwin, an undergraduate student from Appalachian State University, working with the Office of Learning, Recovery, and Acceleration. Brittany Hart, a graduate student from UNC Charlotte, working with NC Virtual Public Schools. Deja Ishmael is an undergraduate student from UNC Chapel Hill, working with the Center for Safer Schools. Christy Wynn is an undergraduate student from UNC Chapel Hill, working with the Office of Charter Schools. Emma Rogers is an undergraduate student from NC State University, who is working with the Office of the State Superintendent and Teacher Engagement. Sasha Simbor is an undergraduate student from UNC Charlotte who has worked with the State Board of Education office. Cole Smith is a graduate student from UNC Chapel Hill working with the Office of Learning Recovery's Research and Evaluation section. Ellie Thompson is a graduate student from Duke University working with the Office of Learning Recovery's Research and Evaluation section. And Hannah Wogan is a graduate student from UNC Chapel Hill, working with the Office of Academic Standards Healthy Schools section. We are so grateful for all of their contributions to the department this summer.
Your front row. Front row is a big one.
And 1, 2, and 3, and one more. 1, 2, and 3.
Thank you so much. You're amazing. Yes, we applied and we were looking.
We're now going to take a break to 9:50, so we're on break, 9:50.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
It's too far west. You guys are too far west.
All right, we are back in session, and I'll turn to State Superintendent Truitt for the superintendent's report. Superintendent Truitt.
Thank you, Chair Davis. It's a very exciting time to be with you all today. I love that there's so many educators in the room because what I'm about to share is the fruits of the labor of our educators. So it's my honor today to bring you the latest set of data from our Amplify K-3 reading diagnostic work. I've been bringing, the DPI has been bringing the board and the public the Amplify data results 3 times a year, beginning of year, middle of year, end of year. And I will be presenting the end of year data today and then showing you how it compares to the beginning of year, middle of year, as well as how it compares to last year. If we could go to the next slide, please, Maria. And then I want to kind of go into more detail looking at our subgroups and what's happening there. So what I can tell you is that, first of all, looking back over the last year and since our teachers have begun their incredible work on letters training, volume 1 and 2, we can say with certainty that the post-pandemic rebound began last year for our kindergarten through 3rd graders. North Carolina continues to close gaps. We're continuing to see improvement for all grade levels. We're continuing to see improvement across all subgroups. And I do, like I said, want to go into a little bit more detail with the improvement that we're seeing across subgroups, because there are a couple of caveats to mention. But overall, it's incredibly good news for all students in our state. So just a little bit of context. We assessed all K-3, this is by law. We have one assessment that we give across the whole state, and that is the Amplify DIBELS 8 assessment. About 437,498 students were assessed, and then about almost 12,000 students were assessed with a product that Amplify has called Lectura, which is important because that gives teachers the ability to assess our multilingual language learners in their native Spanish, if that is their first language. So we're going to start with some national comparisons. So if you look at this slide, you see 2 colors. You see green and you see gray. The green represents the user base, which is the rest of the nation, and the gray represents North Carolina. The lightest shade of both colors is the 2022-20 is this past year, 2022-23, beginning of year. The middle shade is the middle of the year, and the darkest shade is the end of the year. And what this graph tells us is that our kindergartners from the beginning of this year to the end of this year saw a 46% increase in statewide in their percentage of students who are on track or ready for core instruction. And core instruction means whole group instruction. Our first graders saw a 22% increase. Our second graders saw a 13% increase, and our 3rd graders saw a 6% increase. Now, you'll notice, first of all, that kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade all outperformed the rest of the nation. What's interesting to note, though, and what we need to remember when we look at this data, is that our 3rd graders were the group that missed all of kindergarten and half of 1st grade. And then our 2nd graders missed half of a year as well. And also, those students did not have teachers who had begun the letters professional development. And so what Amplify has told us is that third grade, by and large, across the country, so 1.5 million students in the United States are tested using Amplify data, and at least one district in all 50 states uses this test. So we have a very solid sample size to compare ourselves to. And what Amplify tells us is that there's very little movement in third grade nationally, which means it is essential that our kindergarten and first graders are getting the foundational skills that they need prior to third grade. Next slide, please. This slide, as we always share, in red, shows the number of students who are at risk of needing intensive intervention. And we want to see these numbers go down. And that is exactly what we've seen. We've seen a 38 percentage point decrease in the number of kindergartners in North Carolina from the beginning of the year to the end of the year of this past school year who are at risk of needing intensive intervention. And then those numbers continue. We see that's a similar trend, first grade, second grade, third grade. The next slide is just for the board's edification. This is just a reminder of when each cohort, remember we divided pre-K through third grade teachers into 3 different cohorts. The first cohort is completely finished with volumes 1 and 2 of our of letters. Volume 1, as a reminder, is the study of the foundational components of the science of reading, like phonics and phonemic awareness. Volume 2 is the language component, so that's the vocabulary and the comprehension. And then fluency is built in across both volumes 1 and 2. So now we're going to dig into our subgroup performance trends. So this slide, when we look at the colors, what we're seeing here is the first set of bars represents white students. The second set of bars represents Asian students. The third, Black. The fourth, Hispanic. And the fifth are Native American, Alaskan Native students. And what we see here is that the green still represents the nation, and the gray still represents North Carolina. So again, you can see that across all of these subgroups, we outperformed the rest of the nation except for Hispanic students, where there was a 1 percentage point difference. However, what we see here is that white students had a 23 percentage point gain from the beginning of the year. Asian students had an 11 percentage point gain from the beginning of the year. Black students an 18 percentage point gain. Hispanic students a 22 percentage point gain. And our Native American students also enjoyed a 22% gain. So these are incredible gains for our subgroups. But and then actually go to the next slide, please. And then we're also seeing incredible drops in the number of students who require intensive intervention, including our Black students saw a 15% decline in the number of students who need intensive intervention, 20% for Hispanic students, and 20% for our Native American students. So overall trends, we could go next. If we think back to the 2020, the top graph here is the 2021-22 school year, and the bottom is 2022-2023 end of year. So this is comparing the end of year last year to the end of year this year. And what we see is we saw 24,000 more students were at and above benchmark at the end of last year, and 17,000 fewer students are below benchmark last year. And then, next slide please, when we compare that to this year, we're seeing 91,000 more students at and above benchmark and 66,750 students below benchmark, which is just an incredible, incredible shift. And I would love to share a couple of specific LEA spotlights that I think are well worth lifting up. I want to start with looking at Terrell County schools who have really been killing it since they started their letters training. So kindergarten and first grade both increased proficiency levels over 29% just from the beginning of year to the end of year. Clinton City Schools, significant growth from beginning of year, end of year. They went from 31% to 93% proficiency. Onslow County Schools, 19% to 73% proficiency. And Little Alexander County, 22% to 80% proficiency. And then third grade, which again, as we've said, it's really difficult to show significant growth in third grade. Lincoln County and Iredell Statesville both demonstrated a high percentage of growth from beginning of year to end of the year and were above the state in growth for the end of year. So in Lincoln County, their second grade reached 69% proficiency and their third grade reached 63% proficiency. And in Iredell Statesville, same thing, 68% for second grade and third grade was 63% proficiency. So again, they are just total standouts. I don't have it on here, but I want to lift up Sampson County. Their kindergartners started at the beginning of the year at 13% proficiency and are now at 72% proficiency. Their third graders started at 42% proficiency and now have ended at 52% proficiency. So we're seeing, we're going to see our kindergartners next year starting at above where our third graders were this year, which is just incredible. Now, this next chart I know is kind of difficult for some of y'all to see, but this is where we want to be very transparent about where the gaps still are, okay? Because even though our students of color saw incredible gains, our white students started way behind also, and they saw incredible gains, which means that when we look at this data, we're seeing the gap for our white and African American students. Even though they made such incredible gains, there's still a gap there of that increased by 6 percentage points. Our white and Hispanic gap is the same, so it's both it hasn't changed at all. It did not increase at all. And then our white and American Indian gap increased by 3. And I want to talk for a second about what we are doing to address this. So, because I think it's important for the board to know what as Ms. Jones said, there are things that are inextricably linked in education that must support each other. And so one of the things that we have been seeing historically, not just in North Carolina, but across the nation, is that when students do not have core instruction in foundational literacy skills, which again are phonics and phonemic awareness, they end up being put into non-differentiated small groups, and then when they still are not reading because they haven't gotten the correct phonemic awareness, and phonics instruction because our teachers didn't know that that was how they were supposed to be doing early literacy instruction. They end up in intensive intervention groups. And then they end up, by the time they're in the 5th grade and they're not reading, they get referred for special services or for an IEP, which they do not need. They do not have a learning disability. And then we see disproportionality. We see our students of color getting referred more often for services that they, in fact, do not need. They just needed to be taught how to read properly. And so what the department does is the Office of Early Learning coordinates with all of the people in the district who are working in their own Office of Early Learning. There are monthly meetings and there are quarterly meetings for different groups of educators to ensure that all students are staying in, that these educators are getting best practices, which is to say, they are staying in Tier 1 or core group instruction, and that they are not being pulled out or placed into intensive interventions when that is not necessary. Because you're always going to have a small group of students, especially in kindergarten, you're always going to have students who really do need intensive intervention. And when those resources are not there because 3/4 of the class is receiving intensive intervention, then everybody loses. So we work at the department, we work with the IABS team, which does MTSS. One of the things we know from Amplify can monitor who is doing progress monitoring. And we know from our data that the districts, what they have in common, the districts that are really killing it, is that they are doing regular, sustained progress monitoring. So the IABS team at the department, the Office of Early Learning team, they join forces and they work with district leaders to share best practices. And now we have our ELSs, our early learning specialists, one per district, who are also there to push into schools and make sure that this work is being done with fidelity. The board will be hearing, if we could go to the next slide, please. I believe in September, the board will, we will hear our EOG data. And so it's important to remember that while EOGs measure grade level comprehension, our M-class, or sorry, DIBELS 8 now, not M-class, DIBELS 8, is measuring a student's proficiency in those foundational literacy skills that one needs to become a fluent and reader who can comprehend what she reads. And so we look forward to sharing our EOG data. I can tell you that it's very close to pre-pandemic performance. We have shared some of the let me rephrase. Our last year's end of grade data showed that we were very close to pre-pandemic performance. I personally don't know yet what the board is going to see in terms of EOG data because that is still being validated. But what we shared, and if we could go to the next slide, because I want to segue into our second annual Office of Learning Recovery summer convening. So we, for the second summer in a row, brought together district leadership and charter school leadership to sit down with DPI experts as well as with SAS and look at their district's individual data. So remember that the Office of Learning Recovery 2 years ago produced a one-of-a-kind at the time learning loss study that was a population study, which means that it looked at individual students, not sample sizes. When you read the NWEA reports or a report from Harvard that looks at learning recovery and learning loss, you're looking at national samples. These Our study is a population study that looked at individual students, and as you heard from Kaylin Clifton yesterday, looked at how they should have done had there been no pandemic. And so the goal has always been to provide districts with as much data as possible so that they could spend their ESSER dollars in a way that aligns with the needs of their students. So we brought them to SAS again for another convening. Districts still have, in the aggregate, 47% of ESSER dollars still to spend, and that's ESSER $3. I believe it's about $704 million. So we want to be a support to our districts in determining how to spend this money. So we gave all PSUs an in-depth explanation of the new year-over-year recovery model, and then they were able to see their own district's data. And one of the things that we shared with them is that last year, their investments in math recovery paid off. We saw the greatest increase in performance in middle grades math, but the subject was closest to its pre-pandemic performance was third grade reading. Next slide, please. And this is just an example of one of the things that we provided districts, because again, it's very complicated what districts have to do in order to make sure that they are compliant with USED guidance and regulations of these federal dollars. So our own Rachel Junio Wright, who is the new executive director of the Office of Learning Recovery, provided districts with a chart, this chart, to help them understand what they could spend their money on and how, where does that compliance match up to things like summer career accelerators, social emotional learning supports, pre-K through 5th grade early literacy supports. Next slide. So these are just some pictures, but it was an incredible week. And we know that our district leaders appreciate the expertise that the Office of Learning Recovery offers. All of our interns were there offering support. It was really just an all hands on deck, and just a big shout out to Michael Marr and Jenny Korn and Rachel Junio Wright for making that week happen, and also a thank you to SAS for the space. Finally, I'm excited to share that for the first time, I did a governor's school visit, and courtesy of our own Sneha Shah Coltrane, who just does an incredible job of running governor's school every summer in 2 locations. And so the pictures that you see here, one of the areas that a student can specialize in at governor's school is the arts, and specifically choral music. And so an NC State professor named Dan Monick gives his time every summer to, and he's pictured below with me and Gwen Hall, who's another choral director, and our site director at Governor's School East, Laura Sam. And they've got 3 weeks to get a performance together. And as a musician, I can tell you I was absolutely blown away. I mean, it was like they had a whole year to put together this choral performance. Absolutely incredible. And then I was able to go, and this is the top right picture, a kind of just random group of kids who are at governor's school, who attended governor's school this summer, were sitting in a circle, and I got to spend about 90 minutes with them, just asking them questions, talking to them about not just governor's school, but also school in general. I mean, this is a question I love to ask teenagers is, if you could, what would you change about school if you could? And let me tell you, you be careful what you ask for. So they gave me an earful about how high school should look like Governor School, and how much they learned at Governor School, and why can't regular high school look like Governor School, and why this, why that, and why do we have to do this, and I mean, they really let me have it. So it was a really interesting. These kids are just on fire for learning and discussion and thinking about the way things work and how they work and why don't they work this way, and they were just a stellar group of young people. I, in particular, got to spend some time talking to Vishnu, who's in the bottom right. He is from Charlotte, North Carolina, and wants to go to the University of Chicago to study economics. I mean, who knows when they're a junior in high school that they want to go to the University of Chicago to study economics? But Vishnu knows that that's exactly, and he knows who he wants to study with as well. I mean, he's got it all mapped out. But it was just an incredible experience. I get letters all the time from Governor School alumni who are very excited to let me know what Governor School meant to them. This is a program that's been going on since the 60s, I believe. And they are an incredibly passionate group of people. So it was an honor to do that. And again, thank you to Sneha Shah-Coltrane for always making sure that Governor School runs very smoothly. And that, Mr. Chair, concludes my report.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any questions or comments from my colleagues?
I will
Ms.
follow up
Jones.
Superintendent Truitt simply to say, I would not be in this seat were it not for the North Carolina Governor School program. I went to Governor School East. I was from a town of 4,000 people. Governor School opened my eyes to what education should look like, and it made me want to be an educator. So thank you so much for advancing the work of Governor School and recognizing the hard work of all of those instructors. It is a life-changing program in our state.
Very clearly, yes. Thank you for sharing that.
Ms. Kamnitz.
I have to celebrate the data that you just presented, and congratulate every teacher in this state who has been working so hard to, incredibly difficult. But I hope that this confirms to all of them that work was worth it, because these are students who are going to go forward into their educations with the kind of base that they have to be successful. So, and more to come, but it's so great. As you say, there is work to do, because we also have to worry about those kids who are 3rd, 4th, 5th middle school, who, what can we do to help them? And I know that that's on the radar, but that's also urgent work. But anyway, just so excited. Thank you everyone for the work that you've done.
So we look forward to bringing a solution and recommendation for adolescent literacy to the General Assembly in this short session.
Any other comments?
I'll just say, as an elementary principal, that letters and the work of the science of reading has really shown collective efficacy in my building. Our teachers are excited. It gave a how to read to achieve. I believe that it will pay dividends, and personally, as a mom, my child was a 3rd grader. My youngest was a 3rd grader this year, so he is one of those kindergarten cut short, half of 1st grade, and this year, through a wonderful educator and the tools of letters, he went from always being red and yellow to blue and making a 4 on his EOG. So I truly believe in the work that's being done, and I have seen the gains and the excitement of educators, and look for that to continue. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent. We'll now move on to the committee discussions, and we'll begin with student learning and achievement led by Ms. Jill Kamnitz. Ms. Kamnitz.
Thank you, Chair Davis. I share the work of this committee with my colleague, Dr. Olivia Oxendine, and we had a very brief agenda this month. I'm sure that will not be the case next month, but we had our regular item of new business, which was standard revision updates. And we are now actively, sorry, I'm just going to pull this up. Bear with me. I was so excited about scores that I didn't get myself ready. We have 4 areas that are currently in the works to revise their standards. Healthful living has been in process for quite a while, and there was no change there. We are still waiting for the survey window to close in September, and then we'll move from draft 1 to draft 2 of those, and with the goal being a final 3rd draft. We are also moving forward in K-12 arts and K-12 world language. Both of them have, the standards writing teams have been selected, and both of those standard writing teams met during July. And the next step of work is to bring us a draft 1 of both of those standards. And then the guidance is a little bit different. There seemed to be a recommendation from the early surveys to use the American School Counselors Association Student Mindsets and Behaviors for the guidance standards, and there's now a second survey out to confirm that that is what the field would like us to do, and so that work is a little bit behind the other 2, but right on target. So lots of work being done by the standards team, and we look forward to continuing to hear about that good work. And then finally, we only have 1 action item, which is a consent item. We just heard about the governor's school. Part of what supports the governor's school is an active board, and we have 2 appointments to that board that we'll be voting on today. One is the first is Dr. Isa Cox, who's the superintendent of Ashe County Schools, and then Laura Parrott, who's the director of advanced academics in Durham. And so we will be voting to approve both of those people today, and that is the end of mine.
Thank you, Ms. Kamnitz. So the SLA committee is bringing us 1 item SLA at 1 consideration today. Any questions on the SLA work?
I just have,
Dr.
and
Oxendine.
I'm asking this because I was late arriving yesterday, and I apologize for that publicly. But I did want to just tie to the comment about the closing of the surveys. I continue hearing, getting, not necessarily complaints, but concerns about citizens not having the ability to go into the surveys and make comments. And I don't know what we can do to resolve that, but I know there's an opportunity for them to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they just say to me, I'm not being barraged every hour with phone calls and emails, but occasionally between meetings I have citizens say, I'd like to comment, especially on the health standards, and they can't figure it out. Is there, maybe could we have a demonstration or something?
Well,
Superintendent.
yeah, thank you for that question. So we have received, I believe, over 700 comments. It is working. I've gone in periodically. My guess is that's user error, the people who are reaching out to you. We not only can someone go in and make comments, but they have an opportunity to make comments on every single standard, and then there is a general comment
So there's a general section?
There's a general section at the end of the survey. I mean, we want, in order to get good feedback, people need to read the standards, right? They have to read the standards and then make a comment. So I actually asked Christy Day about this about a week ago, and I asked her to pull the volume of comments that we've received, and it was a very large amount.
All right, good. That's good to know.
If I could follow up, so perhaps is there someone that, as a board member, when we get this type of feedback, we could refer the person who's saying, I want to make a comment, but I'm having trouble doing it. Is there someone we could, or some team we could refer that to?
That would be Dr. Day.
Okay. You ready, Dr. Day?
Dr. Day, am I right that it was over
Here we
700 comments?
Dr. Day.
Yes, we have several hundred comments in there, and we've left it open an extremely long time to make sure that PSUs can get back in school and give feedback, teachers get back. The survey, you can give comments objective by objective, And then if you don't wanna do that, you can skip all the way to the end and just get general.
So you can scroll to the end.
Yeah, you don't have to answer all the questions you can. You can pick and choose grades, specific objectives, whatever you like.
Okay, that is the basic direction. I have made some comments, but it's in specific areas, but
Yeah.
the scroll to the end will help.
Yeah, so it's great to know how many comments we have received. That's incredibly helpful. It's also maybe insightful to know how many weren't able to make comments. And I think the way you have it set up creates an educational opportunity for those who are waiting or wanting to make comments because they have the objectives, they have the material to look through
Right,
before making a comment.
that's exactly right.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Thanks for that point. Now moving to Education, Innovation, and Charter Schools, led by Mr. John Blackburn. Mr. Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I share in the work of this committee with my friend Jill Kamnitz as the vice chair. We have 3 action items today. The first one is Dogwood Classical relocation. We talked about this last month. And then Ms. Picaro helped us yesterday with the discussion about this. So what Dogwood Classical Academy is asking to move their charter from one county to an adjoining county, which is 4.8 miles away. We've received comments from several districts adjoining where the move will be made to. We've got impact statements, and we've also gotten responses from the folks at Dogwood Classical. This will be a sort of a precedent-setting move. So I think, Mr. Chair, that we need to make this a separate vote if we could.
We can.
Yes.
We'll note that for the record.
Okay, thank you. So this one, do I have any questions about this? Okay, all right. The second one, second EICS 2 is update to the mission statement of Union Day School. And it's a charter school in Union County, and they want to receive the International Baccalaureate authorization. There's no other school in Union County that does this. It's pretty affirming. I really like what they're doing. They're doing great work, and this will continue their mission to serve folks that have an interest in that. The third action item, EICS 3, is the draft eligibility criteria standards procedures for admission to the schools for the deaf and blind. Ryan Collins did a very thorough job about this, where we consulted with the folks at both the Governor Moorhead School, the School for the Deaf, and both schools for the deaf, about sort of tightening the rules about how they wanted these done. So we recommend that the board adopt these actions to make this a more seamless procedure. So those are the 3 action items before you today. The discussion items. So the 4th discussion, state summary of academic gains in Restart Schools. These were led by Julie Garber and Kaylin Clifton. They did an amazing job of teaching us about where Restart Schools have come since. So they gave us a lot of data. I hope that a lot of you will look at the data, mine the data, but I will tell you that it is very affirming. It's good data, and I appreciate those folks working so hard. Now, once again, you'll have next month to come back, so study the data. If you have any questions, please come back to us. We'll be happy to answer those. Julie and Kaylin did an amazing job. They're both statisticians, and for those of us that, I said it yesterday, those of us that like numbers, there were great reports. So our next item for EICS 5, which were the approval of new policies. They dealt with appointed interim superintendent, and then rules update, can I do those together?
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you. So, Allison Schaefer presented those to us. I want to shout out to this department, Dr. Martin and Ms. Garber. They took on this role. All of our departments are going to have to go through a decennial review of the rules and their policies, and this department sort of took it on first. So I want to publicly thank Dr. Martin and Ms. Garber for their hard work. And once again, if you have any questions about these, we'll talk about those next month again. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Blackburn. So 3 items before us today, EICS 1, which will be voted separately, and 2 and 3. Any questions or comments from Mr. Blackburn? Mr. Treasurer.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment that in my experience in Raleigh, that anytime the word rules or rules review commission is mentioned, I think people zone out. You should never underestimate how difficult a task this is. It is more difficult than passing a piece of legislation, actually. As you go through this process, you can be all the way in the 8th inning. And if an and needs to be changed to an or a comma needs to be changed to a period, you almost have to start all over again, and the clock starts. So I applaud what you're getting ready to get into, and I just wanted the board to understand the seriousness of this task. And it gets more serious as this board is challenged in the future in the courts of law, in OAH, in the Court of Appeals, and the Supreme Court of our state. When we get challenged on things, oftentimes somebody will come in and say, did you have a rule? And sometimes we don't. And so I applaud you for doing it, and I know that sounded very dramatic, but it's a serious, serious matter what you're embarking on, and I appreciate you doing that.
Thank you, Treasurer. I will tell you from my personal experience, it's very affirming and confirming that we have such a great legal team here and to lead us in what we're trying to do. So thank you for your comments. They're well meant, and we completely understand and agree with you. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you, Mr. Blackburn. We'll now move to the Educator Standards and Practice Committee led by Dr. Olivia Oxendine. Dr.
Thank you,
Oxendine.
Chair Davis. I am Olivia Oxendine, and I chair this committee. Joining me in that responsibility is Dr. Donna Tipton-Rogers. So for this month, under ES&P, there are 4 buckets of revisions. Major important work that I'm sure is going to please our HR directors out in the field, because anytime things are clarified for them, they are smiling and applauding. So the first area is for anyone with an expired continuing professional license, the CPL. There is a process now in terms of how to restore that license, depending on the completion of 8 CEUs. The individual is given 3 years to make that to complete those CEUs, and then there will be a decision about restoring the initial granting a full CPL license. The second area provides guidance for the conditions for restoring a CPL, the continuing professional license, based on poor performance. So there are steps and processes in place in policy now in terms of how to go back to from the IPL to the CPL, and it's still dependent on the completion, I think, of 8 CEUs and then a couple of other steps involved. And GS, General Statute 115C 270.20, replaces the retirement license, and in lieu of the retirement license, we now have what is called the lifetime license. So a lot of text was removed from policy around the retirement license. If an individual applies for the lifetime license and still is in the process of holding a continuing professional license, let's say there's a few years left on that CPL, then that continuing license, the CPL with the full 5 years, even though there may be 2 years left, it's still in effect, in other words. Another area of revisions has to do with the the principal and the assistant principal. So a school district may hire a retired principal or an assistant principal, regardless of licensure status, to complete the duration of that given school year. So that concludes my one-item report for August. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Oxendine. Any questions or comments for Dr. Oxendine? Hearing none, we'll move to business operations led by Vice Chair Alan Duncan. Vice Chair Duncan.
Thank you, Chair Davis. Along with my friend John Blackburn, we lead the Business Operations Committee. We have 2 actions on first read items and 2 action items. Biz Op 1 is approval of contracts over $500,000. We had Kevin Harrison report on 5 of such contracts, all for the replacement of buses for PSUs around the state. Total of approximately $23 million. Mr. Harrison reported on the source of the funds, which included national settlements where the money's been allocated, for example, in the Volkswagen settlement to the purchase of buses and other allocations of funds. Duke Energy was also a supporter of specifically recharging stations as part of having electric vehicles. That's going to become a very prominent issue. Recharging stations are expensive and are going to be needed in our districts as we seem to be transitioning to some degree to more and more of electric vehicles. Not part of the action item, but a brief report that's worth stating was Mr. Harrison also commented that with respect to the reserve funds for gas, that specifically diesel fuel, that the board had asked the legislature to allocate and was allocated last year of $34 million. It turned out that about $12 million more than was originally budgeted was needed, and that turned out to be a helpful thing to a number of districts. We don't have additional money allocated this year. The prices right now have gone up a little bit, but we're hopeful that they'll move into the spring swoon as they did last year, and that will perhaps allow us to be fine in terms of budgeting on that. But we will keep an eye on it as the year goes by. Again, that's not an action item, but it was something that Mr. Harrison reported on. Our other contract in Biz Op 1 is the Governor Moorhead School's medical exemption contracts, and specifically there are 2 with Invo Healthcare Associates. One is for physical therapy services, and one is for speech therapy services. Both of these are 3-year contracts, and they are specifically tailored to the needs of students at the Governor Moorhead School. And they're somewhat unique services compared to the general physical and speech therapy services that we provide in a general sense for our schools. So that's the conclusion of Biz Op 1. Biz Op 2 is sort of a miscellaneous fixing of, or anticipation really, of North Carolina Public Schools allotment policy manual changes as we get close to having the budget for this year, so that the department is ready to move forward with business services. The first item related to relates a good bit to what turns out to be Biz Op 3 and 4 are our action items, but the first one has to do with the $10 million amount allocated by the General Assembly as part of the Parental Leave Act, and that $10 million is for substitute teachers for the districts for filling those slots or positions when an educator is taking a parental leave appropriate to the new policy that's been passed. The second in these miscellaneous changes was to establish a new PRC for CTE, specifically for funds that are used for credentialing. As you know, we have moved increasingly to credentialing in CTE and continue to move in that direction. And it's deemed helpful and appropriate if we have a separate PRC for that, so that we can better track the credentialing advances that are being made and the funds that are being used to support those advances. And finally, the third primary miscellaneous change has to do with ESSER 3 funds. And this also dovetailed with some of our presentations yesterday, which was the original ESSER 3 allocations were to be focused on math, because math was where it appeared the greatest learning loss had been sustained during the course of the pandemic. With 1 year left for use of ESSER 3 funds through the end of September of next year, it now appears that the math recovery is occurring more quickly than the recovery for English language loss. And so ESSER 3 is being modified to allow that the funds which were originally just allocated for math supplemental funding for education and specific tutoring and other services, that can now be used for all tested areas, including science and English language, which again also need particular attention for our students. So those are the three primary items on BizOp 2. We now move to our action items, BizOp 3, and these both relate to the new Parental Leave Act. In BizOp 3, Allison Schaefer provided us with the proposed administrative rules to move back to the Treasurer's point for temporary rulemaking regarding the paid parental leave section of the 2023 Senate Bill 20. We have worked on those rules. They have been before us before a couple of times. There have been some technical corrections that were made at the legislature, so that's created further modification of the proposed rules. So we now have temporary rulemaking authority sufficient that we're going to move forward, assuming the board approves these temporary rules today, which we have discussed now over the course of 3 meetings. BizOp 4, Dr. Tomlin reported on the changes brought about by the Parental Leave Act that relate to our school employees' benefit and employment policies and approved proposed administrative rules for temporary rulemaking. So with respect to that, Dr. Tomlin provided some changes that are necessary in our policies, our employment policies as a result of the Parental Leave Act. To use his phraseology, he sought to sneak one in relating to substitute teaching and further clarification, if you will, of the rules, and it's really not sneaking one in because it's a related subject matter and there's been a lack of clarity about it. We had a very good discussion about that, and our advisors were very helpful as well. And that part of the proposal for the employee benefits manual revisions has been withdrawn for further consideration in terms of coming back to us next month with taking into account the insights that were provided. In addition, some further legal research will come back to us next month with potential language for that. So that's still in play, but it's not part of what we're voting for today, to be very clear. It's been removed from our agenda as that section of it, and all other sections which are consistent with what we have talked about before and are necessary since the Parental Leave Act went into effect July 1st. All of those things we will move forward with, and that item will come back to us in light of the very good discussion that was held. We had updates on contracts, executed contracts, and planned contracts, and requests. And there was a question that was raised during that. And Dr. Day is still here, and she is here to give you a very specific response and answer any questions about the contracting issue.
While she's approaching, if I might, I did not mean to add extra work on your plate. I just felt like because I asked the question publicly, it probably needed.
No, we should have these.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Any question we welcome and we want to answer, Dr. Day can do that.
Yes, thank you. This particular task order, the funding source says special fund, these are DHHS funds that were given to us, so that's what the funding source is. The terms are, you'll see it's a very short term. They have until September to liquidate, but we had a delay in the task order completion, so that's why the terms are shorter. This particular task order is to train 17 master's level school social work and school counseling students with the skills needed to address behavioral health needs in children in schools. So basically they'll get $10,000 stipend, 17 of those master levels, if they're working in a school setting. They'll receive seminars, web-based training, and they will create a school-based deliverable to show their learning that they have within the school. And then they will, they have to have one or more courses that are very specific to trauma informed practices in children.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Day. And we also had available for all members to review our monthly budget report. And with that, that completes the work of the committee. Are there any questions on that?
Questions
Yes.
for Vice Chair Duncan? Treasurer.
Sorry, sometimes I speak from my heart, but today it happens to be from my mind. As a member of the Community College Board, I've offered our staff to the community college system as well as to DPI as we try to understand the fact that this is not maternity leave, this is paternity leave. This is for both the mother and the spouse of the mother to get this leave. And the fuzziness inside of that as it relates to our pension system. And is that leave considered, will people be earning pension credit during that leave time? So I just wanted to offer the Office of State Treasurer to reach out. We're already developing this recipe for the community college system as they try to implement this paternity leave in terms of its impact on the pension system and whether people earn pension credit, so that we can get the right information out to the school systems, to the HR directors and the HBRs, so they can actually give the right information.
Thank you. We appreciate the coordinated effort that's going on among several state agencies, including yours. Thank you for that assistance and thought. So unless there are any questions, that concludes our report, Chair Davis.
Okay, thank you. Well, that concludes our discussions from our work yesterday. That brings us now to the chairman's report. So the events in Raleigh this year have made it clear that there's now no middle ground in public education in North Carolina. Either you're for our students or you're not. And if for our students, we must be all in for all of our students and their teachers and their principals and their schools. We're in a critical time in the life of public education in North Carolina, facing extraordinary challenges and many self-inflicted obstacles. Now more than ever, with the increasing emotional and mental struggles that our students face, they need us to be all in. It's imperative for the future of our state that this board and this department rededicate ourselves to being all in for all of our students. And in the months ahead, we will demonstrate what it means to be all in for our students. So if you care about your students' education, the education of all students in this state, and the future of this state, we invite you to join us in this endeavor. We'll now move to voting on the items from your committee reports. That will include, from our closed session discussion last evening, the 21st Century Subgrant termination recommendation, extenuating circumstances committee recommendation, and the 16 limited license and 3 initial professional license approvals. Also note that we will vote on EICS 1 separately. Is there any other item requested to be voted on separately today? Hearing none, I ask for a motion to approve the following: the July 7th, 2023 meeting minutes, SLA 1, EICS 2 and 3, BizOp 1, 2, 3, and 4, the 21st Century Subgrant termination recommendation, the extenuating circumstances committee recommendation, and the 16 limited license and 3 initial professional license approval recommendations. Mr. Treasurer, motion by the Treasurer. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Hall. Any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, Dr. Petrie Martin.
Dr. Oxendine.
Yes.
Mrs. Kamnitz.
Yes.
Mr. Keenan.
Yes.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Dr. Tipton Rogers. Mr. Blackburn.
Yes.
Dr. Ford. Treasurer Falwell.
Yes.
Lieutenant Governor Robinson.
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan.
Yes.
Chair Davis.
Yes, motion carries unanimously. We'll now move to the final item on our action agenda, which is EICS 1. The recommendation from the EICS committee is to approve the relocation request contained in EICS 1. Is there a motion to approve this item? Motion by the Treasurer. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Oxendine. Any discussion on the matter? Dr. Petrie Martin.
Dr. Oxendine.
Yes.
Mrs. Kamnitz.
No.
Mr. Keenan.
No.
Mr. Hall.
No.
Dr. Tipton Rogers, Mr. Blackburn,
No.
Dr. Ford, Treasurer Falwell,
Yes.
Lieutenant Governor Robinson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan,
No.
Chairman Davis.
No. Motion fails 6-3. That concludes our agenda for today. I want to extend my appreciation to the Department of Public Instruction and hard work for preparing this month's meeting. I now want to call Mr. Treasurer.
I just want to say two things before you finish, whenever that's appropriate.
We're ready to adjourn, so
Okay.
turn to you.
Just two quick things for everybody listening as well as the staff. Your state health plan, which is a very important benefit to those that teach in our communities. That board is made up of appointees of the governor, President Pro Tem, the Speaker of the House, and myself. Last week, they voted for the 7th straight year to freeze family premiums without a change in deductibles or copays. And especially for the entry-level employees of these school systems, just because we freeze a family premium doesn't mean people can afford to pay it. We have people who are working 1 week out of every 4 just to pay this family premium. But I'm reporting to you on behalf of all those members of the State Health Plan Board of Trustees that is the case for next year. In addition to that, we're going to continue the elimination of all costs for insulin. The cost of insulin has gone up 3-fold in 7 years. I don't think insulin has changed a lot since I helped my grandmother with her injections in 1964, believe it or not. And when you get, especially men, my age, when the price of something goes up 3-fold in 7 years, people get insulin inadherent. And when you get insulin inadherent, then you get yourself in a medical vortex that you probably will never recover from. So the state health plan also did that, and I wanted members to know that. And the $25 premium for individuals is still the same also. Secondly, you heard the news yesterday, which should frighten everyone in this room, about the United States of America's debt being downgraded by 1 notch by Fitch's. And we should all be alarmed about that, because it doesn't matter if we're #1 in the country for business outlook or business activity, 3rd fastest growing state. We've been able to retire 60% of the state debt in an 8-year period of time. With all that good news in North Carolina, we cannot have a federal government who has an addiction for money where the cost of that addiction keeps going up because they're getting downgraded. And what Fitch has said, Mr. Chairman, was the deterioration in governance was the reason they gave. A deterioration in governance of the federal government of this country. And it should be of deep concern to everyone. Lastly, much more technical, you hear a lot about return to work. I just want to remind everyone, it's very complicated. We're all on a fiscal year in this room, but obviously the rest of the world is on a calendar year. When you're dealing with the return to work provisions, let's say somebody retired on January 1st of this year, and they've sat out their 6 months. Very important, the Laurie wants me to say this, without any pre-existing relationship. They can come back to work at half the salary and half the hours within a calendar year. So if somebody came to work for the school system who retired in January and they want to come back to work for us in August, if you think about how much time there is between August and December 31st, it almost gives them the opportunity to come back with a lot of the ability to work a lot of hours, because those hours are compacted over a 5-month period of time. And of course, when the calendar rolls on January 1st, they can also work probably another 5 months or 6 months into the next calendar year. So I know the superintendent deals with this all the time, but we're just in a period of the calendar right now where when you're trying to fill positions and you have somebody who's retired and you don't want them to violate their pension rules, this is the way of actually running the trains. So I know I should have had a Ross Perot whiteboard when I explained that one. But I think people understand that the reason I'm spent so much time on this, Mr. Chairman, is that as we're trying to fill positions, as you're trying to open schools, knowing how these things work is very, very important. It could get some of these superintendents over the hurdle they need to actually have bodies in classrooms.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Now ask for a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Keenan. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Blackburn. Dr. Petrie Martin.
Dr. Oxendine.
Yes.
Mrs. Kamnitz.
Yes.
Mr. Keenan.
Yes.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Dr. Tipton Rogers. Mr. Blackburn.
Yes.
Dr. Ford. Treasurer Falwell.
Yes.
Lieutenant Governor Robinson.
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan.
Yes.
Chair Davis.
Yes, we are adjourned. Have a good day.
Safe travels.